Uriel had a grave choice to make. The crown of Ulfanash, rendered in red gold and jade at the apex of the arch, seemed to glower down at him. To walk under it, he thought, is as good as placing that crown upon my head. I will crown myself with nothing but his curse, the king of fools, last scion of Ulfanash's line. That is not an honor I wish for. On the outside of the rippling field stood Captain Uriel, corsair, fickle, sometimes callous, always full of rage, lauded and feared in equal measure. On the other side, at the heart of the shrine, another Uriel awaited, and the manner of that Uriel was unknown to him. This Uriel, proud Uriel, Uriel the pirate, was free to make the choice between the two. As free as he had been to choose to return at his birthplace's time of need, as free as he had been to abandon the restrictions of the path in the first place. To pass through the shining wall and enter the shrine of Ulfanash, or to let his home die. Turn away from those who had dishonored him, and remain the exiled pirate king. Choose choice, or choose to relinquish choice forever, he said. There is no departing this path, he laughed. How delightfully absurd, how dreadfully irritating. He remained where he was, lost in thought. Shouts came to his ears, more screeching. A wave of aliens tried to break through the Eldritch Raiders' defensive perimeter. There were not many of his voidsmen remaining, deadly warriors all who had followed him to the edge of the galaxy and back. They fought expertly. He was sure that no more would fall here. Now they were in good position, but they were ready to die for him. To die, so that he might vacillate. I am lost, he thought. Lost is the word for it, in thought and in deed. I have been for a very long time. He pinched at his slender chin with armored fingers, as if this were a choice such as those on the path of dreaming might make, a phantom decision to prepare him only for more phantom decisions, from which he would awaken, excited, but untouched by consequence. He dithered, he, Uriel, decisive and bold, wavering in the face of responsibility. Insight flashed in him like lightning, although in truth it was but the first strike of a storm that had been gathering for many passes. What if he had abandoned Diandon, not because of his wounded pride, but because of his inability to bear the burdens placed upon him? This is what he thought. For all my prowess, am I a coward? My prince! You must hurry! Shouted Yalianar. There came the loud, staccato banging of a scatter laser. Multiple bolts causing the air to heat explosively. Another chorus of screeches, this followed by an easy quiet. Iandon rumbled. The winds of far-off decompressions tugged Uriel's robes. A foul taint came fleetingly onto the air. The Infinity Circuit screamed in outrage as the hive mind assailed it. Crystal shattered somewhere distant, wild screams chasing after the delicate sound. I have rushed here. Why do I delay? He thought. Because I have not made this choice. Another part of him countered. I have not come here of my own volition. Coming here was not my choice to make. It never has been. The dead hand of Moray Heg grips the threads of my destiny tightly, dragging me pace by painful pace to face the duties demanded by my heritage, no matter where I hide. He shifted his posture. I have been brought here by what is hidden within the shrine, but it cannot make me enter. Uriel's mind was heavy. The pain of the embattled Infinity Circuit was his pain. The implacable wall of the Great Devourer's intellect, opposing it, threatened to crush his spirit. Through this psychic tumult, still the shrine's ward had pulled at him. Freedom was not the lot of any Eldar, not since the fall. He realized that now. Prince Uriel is the autarch of Craftworld Iandon. Descended from the revered Eldari bloodline of Ulfanash, famed as the greatest mortal hero of the species, Uriel's natural talent as a military tactician saw him in good stead as he trod the path of command. Treated with scorn by his kin due to his status as a child born from a father not of noble blood, many speculate his patriarch to be a scion of the Path of the Exile, or even a Comoran of the Dark City. Battling the aggressors of the Great Devourer, Splinterfleet Naga, during 809.M41 within the Yabara cluster of space. The craftworlds of Malantai and Idaray had failed to thwart the remnant of Highfleet Behemoth as it overran the prosperous Exodite world of Halafel. Iandan's forces under command of Admiral Drayek arriving in orbit to find its world spirit destroyed. His underestimation of the Voidspawn saw to the destruction of his flagship, the auspicious illumination of eternity, and much of his fleet. Uriel, though young, assuming command of the beleaguered fleet, rallied what remained and targeted the enemy bioships. His boarding actions, though costing many lives, successful in frenzying Splinterfleet Naga. Ordering Halafel to be scoured of life, with no hope of rescuing the survivors on the surface. After months of campaigning, Uriel's fleet combined with Malantai and Idaray, cleansing the Yabaric cluster of Tyranid life. Promoted to the rank of High Admiral of Iandan's fleet, Prince Uriel began to fall to the vices of pride, as he envisioned himself as the reclaimer of the stars, much to the chagrin of his advisors of the Seer Council, such as Farseer Kelmon. Becoming a figure alike to folklore for the people of Iandan, with every victory, Uriel's arrogance grew, his attacks on the pirate armada of the renegade Raven Guard Astartes, Argon Calarax, proving to be costly. Combating the Chaos Fleet, comprised of thousands of betrayers, cultists and marauders, not even Iandan's warships could match their numbers, as almost a decade of battle spiraled into bloody naval warfare. Sundering half of Calarax's forces, as well as his flagship, the Deathless Reaver, during the Battle of Agrion, the renegade put his sorcerers to death in order to enlist demonic entities to replace his losses. Nakari, greater demon of Slaanesh, granted Calarax the location of Craftworld Iandan in exchange for a hefty trade of pilfered spirit stones. Uriel rallying all Voidcraft of his kinsmen in an attempt to crash Calarax before he reached his home. Thus the Battle of the Burning Moon began, as the largest scale naval battle seen for centuries. Uriel's flagship, the Flame of Asurion, battling Calarax's new flagship, the Riot Hunger. Boarding the vessel, alongside the finest warriors of Iandan, Uriel dueled Calarax in single combat, burying the hilt of his sword into the Chaos Lord's chest. 3 Chaos cruisers, passing through Uriel's fleet, headed straight for the Craftworld. Their unleashing of 3 dozen cyclonic torpedoes would be a last act of defiance before being sundered by the guns of Uriel's flagship. The Craftworld's Firestorm defense lasers intercepting all but one of the torpedoes. Its impact destroyed all members of the House of Arianal, save for the daughter of Haria and Arctai, Ayana. Having damned the souls of tens of thousands of Ayandari to be feasted upon by Slaanesh, the fire of creation within the heart of the Shrine of Asurion snuffed out for the first time since its maiden voyage. Voluntarily exiling himself from Iandan, Uriel relinquished his trappings of nobility and embarked upon the stars to live the life of a corsair, his eldritch raiders earning a pedigree as among the greatest pirates of the stars, until disaster once more struck their homeworld. Beset by the onslaught of Highfleet Kraken during 992.M41, the Maw of the Great Devourer gorged on the lives of the Iandani as Farseer Kelmon and Spiritseer Ayana mustered a desperate defense. Their fleet completely destroyed, as untold millions of fangs and claws tore the living and the dead alike to shreds of blood and wraithbone. In the hour of Iandan's direst need, their prodigal son returned, 50 years following the Battle of the Burning Moon. Receiving word of the doom of Iandan from Kelmon's psychic call for aid, Prince Uriel unleashed the Eldritch Raiders upon the Tyranids, purging every ship between them and the Craftworld. Uriel stepping foot once more upon his home, within the Shrine of Ulfanash, beholding the heirloom of his house, the Spear of Twilight. The Harlequin Shadowseer, Salandri Veilwalker, unexpectedly appearing to confirm Uriel's fears of the weapon's power. This relic from before the fall of the Eldar would enable him to save his people, but at great cost. Containing the energies of a dying sun within its construction, only the killing of enemies would sate its ravenous hunger for souls. Its true nature as a crone sword of Morai Heg, unknown to Uriel until his future trials had come to pass. Its ability to return its wielder's psychic senses to those commensurate prior to his species' deadening of their senses, with She Who Firsts now leeching off the souls of the Eldari, Slaanesh's appetite would not be denied to those who wielded the spear. Taking to the field, wielding the Spear of Twilight, Spiritseer Ayana psychically linked to Uriel's mind, telling him to target the Swarm Lord in order to send its minions into disarray. Hurling the Spear of Twilight at the Swarm Lord, watching as its tip effortlessly ripped through its mouth and out from the back of its skull, Uriel clutched his ruined left eye as the power of the relic took its toll, forcing the returned prince to collapse from exhaustion. Now disorganized, the Tyranids were easy prey for the defenders of the Craftworld to purge. Yet 4/5 of their kin had been slain during the battle, and even venerable Farseer Kelmon now required internment into a wraithbone construct. Recovering from his injuries, as he donned the Eye of Wrath taken from his family's vault of treasures, his likewise Cyclops of Iyanden, Farseer Teek Silvereye, would foresee further ruin befalling their home. Regaining the trust of his people slowly as the years progressed, as Iyanden rebuilt, Uriel spent every waking hour combating the threats to his home, particularly of the strain of chaos. Never overcommitting to engagements, Uriel alongside his stalwart lover and shadow, Yalianar, confronted the dangers of the Void, the Spear of Twilight slowly sapping his strength away, as attentions of She Who Firsts delightfully gnawed at his soul. Iyanden once more threatened with extinction, as the War of Wreckfist rooted itself within the Antaeus system. Uriel, under advisement of his seers, launched a preemptive campaign against the Greenskins, uniting the followers of the Spirit Seer, Ayana Arianal, into common cause. Enacting the Battle of Antaeus, Craftworld Iyanden set upon Antaeus Prime, the Orcs unintentionally retaliating with the emergence of a vast space hulk, repurposed with countless weapons of their crude design. The guns of Craftworld and Space Hulk alike unleashing all armaments against one another. The war on two fronts split Uriel's fleet, with Ayana leading the charge of Antaeus Prime, whilst Uriel made all haste to defend Iyanden. Uriel destroying the Space Hulk after numerous torpedo strafing runs. As Teek Silvereye rallied Iyanden's defenders, the Wraithkind Cabal and the cult of the Flayed Hand of Komorra emerged from a webway portal, aiding their plight. Uriel arriving to find no enemies to destroy, the denizens of the Dark City offered their assistance to venture to Antaeus Prime, much to the surprise of all parties involved, until learning their intent to study Iyanden's arts of necromancy in exchange for their might. Ending the life of war boss Wreckfist, fighting at the side of Spirit Seer Ayana, the Dark Eldar claimed hundreds of Orcs to be captured as further payment for their services, before returning to their accursed port of miscreants. Craftworld Iyanden gifted with years of blissful peace thanks to Uriel's efforts. Nonetheless, as the Bonesingers set to work restoring their home to its former glory, the remnants of High Fleet Kraken struck once more. Feeling the stir of Iyanden's Avatar of Cain as it vied for war, Council Eldar Silvereye consulted with Wraithseer Kelmon as he too confirmed visions of another ploy made by the Great Devourer. Both High Fleet Kraken and Leviathan converging upon the ancient maiden world of Duriel, thanks to the manipulations of She Who Firsts. Should the far-ranging hunger and starving dragon merge into one, a threat capable of destroying all life in the galaxy would arise. As the 41st millennium drew to a close, Iyanden once more mobilized for war, yet due to the distance from the Duriel system, allies would be required to buy time for their advance. Petitioning Craftworld Biel-Tan for aid, as Farseer Silvereye made all haste aboard the fleet's faster voidcraft, Imbriel's Embrace. Within the nexus of remembered supremacy to be reclaimed, Farseers Dartario and Altariek met with Teek. Autarch Aleok Sunspear leading the assault of the surface of the planet, now known by its dwindling human populace as Valador. The Shadow in the Warp suppressed Biel-Tan's communications, causing unseen foes to ambush their positions. Abandoning their Avatar of Cain to the slaughter as they retreated from the Valley of Gods, having suffered heavy casualties, with Prince Uriel's arrival in system, additional allies would be needed to face this immense foe. With no weapons capable of destroying the planet outright available, the Craftworlders called for aid from an unlikely ally, the Harlequins. Sunspear leading his peers to the great amphitheater of Biel-Tan, calling upon the Harlequin King and his great troop of 100 kin. The Harlequins establishing an alliance with the Comorites of the Dark City. Within the Tower of Bloody Knives, the Craftworlders spoke with Lord Sarnek, Prime Archon of the Black Heart Cabal, informing the assembled that Supreme Overlord Vect had seen fit to dispatch 1/5 of his Cabal, half of the members of the Cult of Strife, and their great succubus, Lilith Hesprax, to aid their plight. Vect would also provide the means to which Valador could be destroyed. A terraforming device predating the fall of the Eldar, known as the Fireheart, requiring activation by Psykers to harness its power. None would dare use such a device within the Dark City, lest they wish to hand Komorra into the clutches of Slaanesh. Commanding the naval battle above Valador, as Ayana, Hesperax, Sunspear and Silvereye oversaw the assault on the surface, the Prince of Iyanden laid low the High Fleet of Kraken, as Lord Sarnak busied himself with Leviathan. The odious Archon proving far inferior to Uriel's competency as a helmsman and commander. Uriel nonetheless secured a path for the Fireheart to be deployed safely to the planet's surface. Witnessing the moon in orbit of Valador, Ulaniel, become devoured by the maw of Leviathan. As the celestial body turned to bloody red, the omen of the Red Moon continued to diminish the morale of the Ayandani. Ordering his fleet to focus fire on the smaller vessels before targeting the hive ships of Hive Fleet Kraken, their destruction caused the fleet of Leviathan to begin converging on their position to capitalize on the chaos. Ordering his fleet to catapult around the gravity of Valador to regroup with Lord Sarnak's flailing forces, their combined might allowed for an assault on the Norn ship in orbit with Vorpal torpedoes, striking at its gut rather than the head due to the Tyranid's deception storing its mind away from its seemingly obvious location. Deploying to the surface of Valador upon the God Peak wherein the Fireheart began to activate, the Spear of Twilight sang in Uriel's grasp as he defended the Seer Council from the assault of a desperate Swarmlord. Felling 3 Hive Tyrants with his spear as Azaman and 5 of his Phoenix Lord companions joined the fray. Following the death of the Swarmlord, Uriel collapsed, now overwhelmed by the Spear of Twilight's hunger for souls. Comforted by Yalianor, as the Eldar began to withdraw, as the Fireheart caused molten lava to erupt from the planet's core, the life of his companion would be forfeit, as the Spear of Twilight forced Uriel's hand to strike down his affectionately known Shadow. Distraught by the actions he had made, as the spear fell from his grasp, the Ayandari dragged their prince from the fray, as Farseer Silvereye sacrificed his life to sustain the Fireheart's function. The God Peak of Valador exploding into molten fury, as its fallout incinerated the Farseer, second in standing only to Eldrad Ulfran of Craftworld Ulthwé. Slaanesh feasted greedily on the valiant son of Iyanden, as the Tyranids of both Kraken and Leviathan were annihilated. As a brief peace once more reigned upon Craftworld Iyanden, Prince Uriel attempted to return the Spear of Twilight to the shrine of Ulfanash. His wearied body too frail to continue fighting, until Salandri Veilwalker once more intervened. Looking into the reflective mask of the Shadowseer, Uriel foresaw the end of days, the Rana Dandra, himself swollen with power as he held aloft a blazing sword, standing at the vanguard of a united Eldar species, human warriors, and even the restored Eldar Pantheon, casting down the tyranny of She Who Firsts. Renewed of purpose, the Spear of Twilight now having feasted on the souls of his lover, Yalianor, did not harry his form, but restored it. His duty to stand as a champion of the Eldari, too great to be spent as a morsel of its exceptional power. Venturing with Veilwalker far from Iyanden for a time, with the dawn of the 42nd millennium, Prince Uriel faced the final threat to his craftworld, led by the demon prince of Nurgle, Gara Guggulgor, testing the virtue of its favored son. Fighting by the side of the death cult of the Whispering God, the Inari, Prince Uriel destroyed the demon prince and his Space Hulk, sacrificing his own life to save his people. The recovered body of the son of Ulfanash presented to the Daughter of Shades, Yvraine, the emissary of Iniad, taking the Spear of Twilight into her hands, revealing its true form as one of the legendary Crone Swords, vital to ensuring the revival of her patron. Plunging the Crone Sword deep into Uriel's chest, the Prince of Iyanden returned to the land of the living, enshrining him as a champion of the Eldar god of the dead, Yvraine returning the sword to his care, watching it return to the form of the Spear of Twilight. Only one such artifact remaining to be reclaimed by the scions of the Inari. Uriel, now having gained favor of the Whispering God, continues to fight, not just for Craftworld Iyanden, but the Eldar species entire. Driven by his vision of a future wherein the Eldari shall be united in purpose once more, long has it been that a hero comparable in standing to Ulfanash himself has walked amongst the living.